This is Red Ice Radio. From the visible to the obscure. RedIceCreations.com.
You are listening to Red Ice Radio. This is Henrik Palmgren, and we say welcome to all our listeners from around the world. We are coming to you from the west of Gothia up in Scandinavia. It is good to talk to you again. I hope you're doing well and that you managed to enjoy yourself, even though we are living in alarming and unsettling times right now. A lot is going on. If you're new to the program, we encourage you to follow us closely on our website, RedIceCreations.com. You can follow Red Ice Radio 2 to 3 times per week. You can follow our news section for regular updates, and we also have a member section with much more radio, TV, films, music, and commentary. Today we have Ralph Ring with us. He is a natural scientist and a creative technician who in the late 1950s and early 1960s worked together with Otis T. Carr, a protege of the great inventor Nikola Tesla, and a team of dedicated scientists on alternative technologies including levitation and teleportation. With the aid of his small team, Carr and Ralph built a number of flying discs which they claim actually worked. They attempted to commercially manufacture their invention, but their experimentation was terminated by FBI agents, according to Ralph. His dream since birth has been to produce floating homes, cities and countries, and I would include in that for humanity to get off the ground when it comes to transportation and get us airborne and eventually traveling to the stars, utilizing free energy. We'll be discussing magnetism, consciousness and spacecraft technology in the experimental vehicle that he co-piloted in the 1960s. This is known as the OTC-X1, and this craft was powered by rotating electromagnets in conjunction with a number of small, ingenious capacitor-like devices called Utrons. He'll share his story of building, flying and trying to commercially manufacture this type of technology that he calls ether technology. In the second hour, Marsha Brown will join us as well, Ralph's research assistant and best friend. Stay with us for the next 2 hours for an interesting program. Good to have you with us here on Red Ice Radio. How are you today, Ralph?
I'm just fine, thank you.
This is going to be really exciting. We have so many things that we want to talk with you about in terms of your work, in terms of the things that you've been involved in for many, many years now, and also, of course, leading into some of the things that currently are happening and unfolding when it comes to free energy and many other things. But why don't you tell us a little bit briefly about your history, a little bit about your past, so our listeners know kind of where you're coming from, Ralph?
Well, I was raised where I'm actually back to now in Paradise, California. It's a mountain, small town community, but actually we were in a very remote area where my sister and I walked back and forth to school about 7 miles every day. So my main interest and focus has been nature and how natural law works. And I did graduate from grade school up here in the Paradise area, and then went on out into the world to see what was going on and couldn't figure it out. The way things were somewhat confused as to actually diametrically opposed to natural laws. Everything seemed to be going backwards, and I couldn't understand why until I got involved in talking to people a little bit, and they just didn't know that there was there was more to life than what they were experiencing. And I've always felt that we could have our transportation and habitation in one vessel, that we could get off the ground and floating homes, floating cities, floating countries, if you will, and saw no reason why we couldn't. But when I started talking about these things, I seemed to be very, very, I became an orphan. Nobody wanted to talk about it, or they didn't believe it, or and I've had many, many ideas about natural law and how simple they are. So anyway, that progressed up to the time that I became engaged with the government, working as a research scientist in a facility that was government funded. It's called Advanced Kinetics in Costa Mesa, California. And they were having to use the laws of of civic laws, I should say, opposed to natural law, of forcing things. They had me try to force electrons through a magnetic field, and they kept trying to upgrade the power until I could get it through the field, and I thought that's totally ridiculous because nature doesn't work that way. And on the next bench over, they were working on levitation, and they were again causing a big expense for the company and going nowhere with their experiments. So I went home and duplicated everything out of stuff I'd got from garage sales and swap meets, etc., and put together the same experiment I'd been working on, and got the electrons through the field without deflection right away. And the levitation, I accomplished that very simply, and I took the written documents and the photographs I'd taken. I wrote the experiments up, and I took them into Dr. Weinhardt, who was the head of the institute, and showed him what I'd done. I said, well, it looks like I might be in line for a raise here, because this is quite simple. This is the way nature does it. Mm-hmm. And he said, oh, yes, I know, but you don't understand that this is a government-funded research facility, and we're paid here to look for answers, not find them. And that being said, he said, I'm going to have to take these documents and your papers and shred them, have you go back to work. We'll give you a few more dollars in your envelope, but don't talk to the engineers. And I was just a lab tech.
Yeah.
He said, don't talk about this. This is a taboo area. You don't go into any ideas of magnetic resonance and anything about vibrations. He said that's a no-no here. So go back to work and know you were being well paid and forget about all this. Well, I went back to work on the same experiment, got sick and tired of it, and eventually had to quit. And when I quit, I was contacted by one of my neighbors. Actually, he said he was going to a group of people that were into consciously trying to make it a better world, and there was all kinds of people there with new and different ideas. And they said, well, why don't you come over and talk? And I did, and I told them, well, my interest was in magnetism, and that there wasn't any reason why we shouldn't be running on magnetism, because it's everywhere. We breathe it. It's in everything that we conceive. Mm-hmm. It's magnetic in nature. And in fact, electricity comes from magnetism. It isn't the other way around. So anyway, they said, well, what do you want to see? And I said, well, I'd like to see floating homes, like an RV in the sky, or a recreational vehicle in the sky. Why not? Take the tire off the ground, which is polluting and disrupting the gardens that we used to live in, and putting down pavement and cement and asphalt to run these tires. Why not take that concept and turn it horizontally instead of having it vertical, and have your homes? And they can be as big as you want. You can be as big as the city if you want. You can have grassy fields and horses and cows and everything. There's no reason why we couldn't do this. And so they said, well, there's a guy out in Norman, Oklahoma. He was a protege of Nikola Tesla, who was people are beginning now to become aware of who he was. But for a while, they didn't want anything to be mentioned about Tesla. They gave all the credit to Marconi and Edison and people like that. But Tesla was really a hero for magnetic powers as well. The power can be transmitted without wires or telephone poles anywhere. And when Tesla, he was employed with Edison and Westinghouse at the same time, and he helped to develop the dynamos at Niagara Falls. And he went on to say that he wanted to now transmit wireless energy totally around through the Earth, through the oceans and everything, where no one ever would have to depend on meters or paid for energy ever again.
Yeah.
And he took this to the money people, which at that time was J.P. Morgan, and J.P. Morgan said, well, you're going to ruin the system, and you can't do that. You're going to run people out of work. And anyway, long story short, J.P. Morgan said, no, we're going to have to tear some of your facilities down, and not to go any further with this. Anyway, that's how Otis Carr became involved with Tesla, because he worked as a clerk in the hotel where Tesla stayed, and they became very, very good friends. And Carr was a sponge. He loved science. He loved the idea of alternative free energy for everyone. So moving on, Tesla told him that they didn't want what he had to offer people in his time. So you take it to your time and just pass it on down through the generations till they again awaken to who we really are, where we really came from, and what we're really here to do, instead of the nonsense that's been going on.
Yeah.
So that being said, Carr took off and started his own laboratories and started building spaceships, just circular foil craft that would levitate and so forth. And when I talked to the people at the understanding meeting and told them what I wanted, they said, well, you'll have to get in touch with, we'll have to put you in touch with Carr. He wants the same thing. You're calling it floating homes, he's calling them spaceships. So, wonderful. What are we going to do? Well, he was running into trouble where he was because people thought he was a fraud and a crackpot and so forth. And they said, well, let's bring him and his entourage out to California and set you guys together up in a facility, a laboratory, and so forth, where you guys can work together and develop these ideas. So he said, fine. So that eventually happened. Carr was imported to California, and with his entourage, I think he had probably 8 or 10, had some, physicists and engineers and public relations people and so forth. And they put us up in they put us up in Lake Arrowhead for a while till they could find a facility. And if you do you know much about natural law? Once you're on the right path with nature, things just kind of fall into place naturally.
Yeah.
There's no even trying. They just fall into place. So all this happened in just a very short time. Within 3 or 4 weeks, we were working together, and Carr and I hit it off the bat right away because I love the simplicities of nature and the conscious awareness of how very, very simple and beautiful everything really is, if we see it that way. So they put us up, and within a week they had found a facility just down the hill from this lake Arrowhead, and in a place called Apple Valley, Hesperia, actually. And that's near Victorville, California. And it was a huge, beautiful laboratory and workshop and machine shops and dormitory facilities and offices. And they said, it's yours. Go to work and let's get these things off the ground and show people that it can be done. Well, Carr had warned us, that we're going to have tremendous opposition. There's going to be resistance to this on all levels. They just, people, just don't, especially the people involved in investing money in petroleum products and automobiles and everything else. They're not going to want to hear about it. So we'll have to just do our work and get some prototypes going and eventually present them to the people and let the people decide, which way to go with it. So we worked day and night, and we were brainstorming, and I got into understanding what life really is. Life is totally unlimited. We live in a very, very limited idea of life, but it's not. There's much, much more to it than what we ever imagined. And when Carr and I would get together and talk, we'd talk through the night sometimes, and it was just amazing because the mind would open to infinity. We could see and do things in our mind that were just absolutely impossible for the brain to comprehend. So anyway, we went down, we did that, we got our prototypes going, we were flying them around Apple Valley. They're little levity discs. And we had two, and we were working on a third 45-foot craft that we wanted to eventually demonstrate to people, to show that, this could be a family dwelling, and you can stay a few inches, a few miles, or a few thousand miles above the surface of the earth if you so chose. Mm. And all done with the understanding of nature and how she works, and the understanding of conservation and discipline, self-discipline, in the way of allowing yourself not to get too far carried away in the idea that they won't work. Just to believe that they will, and know that they will work, and let it go at that. Well, we got to that point where we needed a manufacturer. We thought, well, let's introduce these to a car manufacturer, and see if we can work with them and get an assembly line building these small craft. Well, this had been done early in Prague, in Europe, in 1940s. The BMW motor car company were building spaceships, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. And the Germans took them over, and they eventually became. They wanted to mount weapons on them and so forth, which they did on some of them. But they were working with electromagnetism, which is totally different than pure magnetism. Pure magnetism, weapons are obsolete. There's no way you could use weapons in the magnetic field that the craft operating in. Let's see, where are we? Oh yeah. So one of our PR people, his name was Wayne Aho. He had the New Age Foundation on Mount Rainier for years after he got out of the service. He was an intelligence officer, and then dealing with UFOs, et cetera, and knew that things were being withheld from the public, and that and especially about craft that could levitate and get off the ground. So he said, let's contact one of the motor car companies here and see if we can't get them working with us. So we called, made arrangements with General Motors. They sent a rep out to Riverside, California. We took our crew. We had a couple of engineers, one of our physicists, and took our little model with us for the meeting. And I was fortunate enough. Now I was just a lab tech, nothing more. But I also was a gopher. I'd go for hamburgers or whatever while we were working. So, but Carr and I understood each other on a very deep and wonderful level. So I was invited on most of the things that were done to go along, and so I did go along on this meeting, and we took a little 6-inch model, a levity disc, and set it on his desk, and it just sat there levitating with no problem, no sound, no noise, no visual ideas of any kind that could be disputed.
Okay.
And the engineers looked it all over, and they had their testing equipment, and they asked us to take our jackets off, and they thought we were using remotes, and then this was in the late 50s and early 60s, so we didn't have anything like that. It was just a pure levitating disc.
Yeah.
And so they examined it, and they finally came to the conclusion that it was working, but it was in violation of the known laws of physics, namely the second law of thermodynamics. That this we're seeing it, but it can't be. It cannot be. This doesn't. There must be a trick here somewhere. So after a more thorough examination, they saw that it indeed was something they didn't understand. And Carr said, yes, sir, this is what we want to introduce, magnetic energy, and we want to produce vehicles. We don't want to disrupt the system. We just want to slowly, like the automobile did to the horse, just gradually come into the scene and have a different form of habitation and transportation available for people. Mm-hmm. And they can still have their cars, they can have their Maseratis, they can have whatever they want, but
right.
Some people like a spaceship. So this guy became furious. He just oh my gosh, he said, you're attempting to overthrow the monetary system. We have hundreds of thousands of people that we support, and they have families to take care of, and kids in school and everything, and you're going to replace all that with this. And Carr said, well, yes, if you give the people the opportunity to not have to pay large energy bills, which is basically 80 to 90% of their income goes towards energy of one kind or another.
Yeah.
And you give them free and abundant energy, then you would allow them the freedom of why they came here, what they're doing here, who they really are, to become exposed, to come to the surface, to have incredible beings that are unlimited in their creations. We would have a world of splendor on all levels, and they wouldn't have to worry or be concerned with the servitude necessary to maintain the electric bill. Well, hearing this, General Motors rep became very upset and said, "Well, this is not going to happen. We're not going to support you in any way, and if you guys put them up, we'll shoot them down. We just not going to see this happen." So, that being said, Carr said, well, we're on red alert now. We're going to have to go back and get a 45-foot craft operational and just do whatever we can, fly over Los Angeles or bells and whistles or lights or whatever we have to do and maybe land and take off, I don't know, to show people that, no, this is a reality. It's nothing more than a better form of transportation and habitation. And get the people interested enough to where they won't close their minds down to the possibility of change, that there is a future in alternatives. Well, we got back to the lab, and we got the 45-foot craft ready for operations, and I went on board with two engineers and myself, and now this was after long, actually they weren't long, but very deep discussions with Carr about who we really are, what we really are. We are energy. The idea of a physical reality is what we are creating in nanoseconds. And he explained a whole different concept that we'd ever heard before. But he explained that we are all creating our realities instantaneously as we go, that the mind of who and what we are is everywhere. We're already in the multiverses, all of us. We're all connected. We're all one, really. And this is a new and different concept. It was then and it is now, and this is what my lecture tours have been on, to try and awaken people to who and what they are, and to realize that they're already free. They've just been caught in the ideas via programming that you have to be under some servitude in order to reach the carrot, and that's not really the case.
That's right.
You know. So So we got on board, and he explained, now your brain has a function. It is a computer that its whole total function is a third-dimensional reality. There are multi-dimensions, and there's infinite dimensions going on simultaneously all the time, even in the space we breathe. There are other universes, multiverses, cosmic, galactic systems involved everywhere. But it's a matter of consciousness of where we sit. And right now, we're experiencing a third-dimensional consciousness having to do with human habitation and what that is. And our energy is then introduced through the water vessel that is called the body, and we are operating this machine, which is very nice because we're learning how to touch and feel and learning the 5 dimensions of a physical reality, which in other systems are not available. So anyway, he said the brain will take care of the body. It has its functions. It's very busy keeping all your cardiovascular and all your other systems in operation, but it doesn't want to hear anything outside that because it says it doesn't exist. It can't happen. It won't happen, and it's very protective of its third-dimensional job.
Right.
So you're going to have to put your brain to sleep. Just clear your mind, and you're going to get on board, and you're going to view this crystal in the center of the craft, and I want you to clear your brain and don't accept anything that it tries to tell you, because it'll say, well, this is nonsense, or this is taking too long, or just clear your mind and stay with your self-discipline and enjoy the ride. So we said, okay, we'll do that. So the 3 of us sat around, and here comes this beautiful crystal illuminated by a laser that was shining up through the bottom of it, and it turned into brilliant, infinite colors from infrared all the way to ultraviolet. And there must have been, I could have counted 1 million different colors of red or yellow. It was just infinite amounts of colors that were shining from this crystal. And then it changed into the color of aquamarine. It's just a beautiful, beautiful aquamarine color. And it flooded the ship inside with this gorgeous color. And it was explained to us before, briefly, and then after, more extensively, that light is frequency, light is reality. And we're going to take this craft and go down range a distance of approximately 10 miles to an area which the engineers measured in light frequencies, the color of aquamarine in a certain area. And then we're going to resonate this craft at the same frequency that is downrange, that being the color or the frequency of aquamarine. And then you're going there, and then you're going to come back, and that'll be the experiment. And he said, now this has little to do with what's called time and space, because there is only in the 3rd dimension the idea, or 3rd and 4th dimension, the ideas of time and space. They really, in the multiverse, don't exist unless you need them to, or you would like them to, and then they exist temporarily, as long as you need them. So he says, so you're going to be going outside and then back into time. But more about that later. Let's get on with it. So we and this color, it was just gorgeous, and we felt just absolutely relaxed. And I cleared my mind. I didn't think about a thing, and it was very easy to do. And then suddenly we heard, and we didn't have cell phones or radio contact in those days. I have no idea. I don't know the communication system, but we could hear Carr loud and clear saying, okay, that's the end of the experiment. Come on down for debriefing. And we said, well, we looked at each other and said, well, we really didn't go anywhere, did we? And we haven't moved. And that was concurrence. We agreed that we hadn't. But so we got out and went down back to the lab, and Otis's office. And we said, well, it didn't work, did it? And he said, well, what makes you think so? And he said, well, we didn't go anywhere. There was nothing happening. And he said, well, and we had these little jumpsuits on that we wore. And we go through a series before we got on board. We took showers and stuff, and we had these fresh jumpsuits. So I knew, and we knew we didn't have anything in our pockets. But he said, well, empty your pockets out on the desk here. So we did. And there was sticks and stones and grass and rocks. And he said, well, if you didn't go anywhere, where did that come from? And we knew we were in a sealed compartment and nobody got on board, and we were fully conscious of what we were doing. And so we had no idea. And he said, well, I told you the brain just it's not interested in anything besides its own job. So what you were operating on was the mind, your consciousness above the brain that took you downrange and back again through time and space, which is called teleportation. And he said your brain won't catch up with you for weeks or months or years or maybe never. It'll never accept the full fact that this happened. But that's okay. It's real. It did happen. This is a multiverse, not a singular little one frequency or so of light. There's multi-dimensional frequencies going on all the time. So anyway, we were still in a state of disbelief because we just were shaking our heads that, wow, this is strange. But we remembered, and I remembered an earlier experiment that we had with one of the 3-foot models while we were operating it. We were vibrating this little 3-foot model at an increasing frequency, and it felt good. It was made out of aluminum, T6 aluminum, very nice looking craft. And I remember touching it. It felt good. And Carr said, well, just wait and see what happens. So as the vibrations increased, I noticed when I tried to touch it again and again, it was turning into jello. It was just the metal itself seemed to be jello-like. And eventually my hand went right through this seemingly solid state of aluminum. And I was shocked at first, and if I can equate it this way, my brain said, that's impossible, you can't do this isn't happening, but yet it was. So Carr was almost in a state of laughter. He was just, he was laughing, and the other engineers and I were just astonished that this could happen. Like it doesn't. How can this happen?
Yeah.
And Carr said, well, I told you, you're energy. You're not, bodies don't exist except, you look under an electron microscope, you don't see a body, you see energy. And that's what we are. We are a composition of magnetic energy that's constant. And we have been forever, we are now, and we will be forever because energy cannot be created or destroyed. So we're energy beings. And when you're told that you're a body and you're given the idea that there's life and then there's death, that is an illusion, that is a continuum that is held under the control of those that would like to control life instead of live life and live so forth. So anyway, let's see, to round this off, later on in life, we got a report on our Marcia's prompting me. What?
You need to tell them how it was confiscated.
Oh. Oh yeah, I guess the report got out that we were doing what we were doing, and we did have little craft going around that they thought was flying saucers. So they came in with these large truckloads of soldiers and cars with people that had FBI badges on and so forth, and they came in and said, we're we're shutting you down, we're confiscating everything. And they read this thing off to Mr. Carr that said, you are attempting to overthrow the monetary system of the United States and to be held
Right.
the truth. So they said you're no longer allowed to talk to each other or come together on any level, and we'll be monitoring you for the rest of your lives. So don't try to do this again ever. Blah blah blah. Cease and desist. And then later on, we got on my email when Project Camelot eventually interviewed me on this. I just want to bring this in at this point to clarify something. We got an email from 2 police officers that were in the Apple Valley area, and they made the statement that, yes, we saw you guys. Did you have these jumpsuits on? We said yes. And they said, well, we saw you. You came, this craft came down and it didn't land, but it stayed above the earth a little bit, and you guys got out, and then you got back on board, and it disappeared. And I said, yeah, that was us. So we had a physical, eyewitness to the event, which was later helped in explaining these things to people, because they say, oh, this stuff couldn't happen. But indeed it did. I've been there and done that. And was there anything else I need to put in there, honey? Marcia. So I'll turn it over to you. I've gabbed enough.
Absolutely. I have so many questions, obviously, for you, but let's try to look at this from the beginning. The 45-foot model, I guess that's the one that we can read about online and so forth, that is called the OTC X1. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And so one observation I made right away here, obviously, then, is that you don't remember, I guess, that you actually got out from the vehicle, whatever we should call it, because my question was, where did the dirt come from? How did it end up in your pockets? But maybe that was something you did yourself, but you might not have remembered that.
Well, now I don't have total recall, but now I have at least 90%, and I do remember. I do remember now. My brain has accepted the fact there must be something other than itself that exists in the universe, and it has. I've come to terms with my brain, and it does now remember. I remember getting out. We had kind of a magnetic ramp that we went down, and I can still see my hands picking up these things and putting them in my pockets. So I can recall it now, where I couldn't for a long, long time. My brain just said, "Oh, that's ridiculous." So now I am very firmly satisfied with the event, and then that it did happen exactly as Carr said. And we were timed, and it was filmed on an 8mm camera, and we had a film at one time, and I have no idea where it is now. But in their time when we left the lab, it was like 3 or 4 minutes, and in our time it was about 15 minutes. I don't know, there was a thing about time that was irrelevant because we really went outside and back in, but there was a time differential that was calculated of the experiment, and that was all documented too. But they took all our paperwork and all our photos and everything.
The FBI?
And I learned later that the craft, the 45-footer, was taken to Los Alamos, New Mexico, and put down underground. And a professor from Yavapai College in Prescott, Arizona, said that he, through the Freedom of Information Act, was going around trying to uncover and disclose a lot of things, and he was in Los Alamos, and he did get down to the 9th level, and he saw the OTC X1 down there, and he talked to some reluctant engineers that were afraid to say too much, but he found that they were trying to mount weapons on it, and when they did, the weapons would not work or they would explode on them, and that they had to eventually abandon the idea of trying to make a war vessel out of it because they didn't understand it. Huh. So anyway, Okay, I guess that's... Any more questions?
Absolutely. Oh, definitely. So this, if we can call it that, then the technology here, the craft, is obviously upsetting the brain, or for you to operate it, coherently, you need to leave that behind, if I can put it that way. Now, do you think that has something to do with the influence of the magnetic field then? Because if you mentioned that this is operating on the magnetic energy that is, I guess, all around in one sense, but we know that the brain has its own magnetic field. So if we get too strong of an influence of another external magnetic field, I guess our perception of reality can change. It can become skewed. So how are these things two connected, do you think?
Well, yeah, it's a whole new conception to people that are used to a third-dimensional idea of what life is, because the technology that we were using, in essence, is called ether technology. It has to do with the ethers and what the ethers are. It is all a form of consciousness, and let's see. Could you rephrase your question just a little more, and maybe I can give a direct answer?
Of course, it was a little bit maybe not that coherent, but I'll try to make it more simple, Ralph. Basically, what I'm asking is, if the brain has its own magnetic field, and if the ship that you were in is either generating its own magnetic field, or it's being it's tapping into another natural magnetic field that is out there in the ether. Maybe that is a reason why reality, from the point of view of the brain, becomes a little bit skewed or changed, because these magnetic field, one of the brain and one of the craft, are kind of colliding, if you will, with each other, right?
Well, I never thought about it that way, but that could be something to look into. But actually, it was just like we were going to sleep. The brain was very, very comfortable. I didn't have any resistance to what we were doing at all, and I attribute that to Carr's talking to us before the experiment and telling us, what to relatively what to expect. And in nature, when something is predominantly happening, other frequencies, other resonance, if you will, are in a holding pattern, so that everything happens in frames of reference, in the moment, and so that there is really no confusion, and there is no overlap, or there is no interfacing, unless you allow it or would wish to have it happen.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So that in frames of reference, when there's something in the now, in that moment, and that was another thing. Carr said there is no past, there is no future, not in real ether technology. So don't waste your time trying to solve a now problem with your past experiments or your past ideas.
Right.
But if you remain calm and attached to your natural intuition, you will find that the problem you're working on, or whatever you're working on, will start to come to you, and it will almost solve itself. And the future then becomes the now, the new now, so that you're continually working in the now. And he says, and don't go into the future either, because it's a waste of time, because you're pushing the envelope, and you need not do that. If you are in harmony with your essence, and you are calm, and you keep your brain out of the way, just don't let your brain start saying this or that, or I believe and I don't, and right, wrong, up, down, left, right. That's a system of duality that will confuse you forever, and it's like a squirrel cage. You go round and round forever. But you have to stay in the now, which is the oneness of all things, that we're all connected. We're all one enormous consciousness that's happening, and that collectively we're we're undivided. It's a state of knowing, not believing. But when you are taught to believe something, you can also be taught not to believe it.
Well, exactly. That's my point. That's a really good observation. I mean, the brain, in that sense, is the part of us that gets programmed when it comes to our education or indoctrination, as some people would say, and I would agree with that. So we also, obviously, our belief, if you will, then gets programmed. And this aspect, Ralph, of both intuition and also connecting this with belief and having overall kind of a spiritual outlook on life is something I want to return to, because I feel that that's a very, very important area. But I just want to ask you, before we do that, quickly, if these ideas that you and Carr were talking and philosophizing about, basically, if they came from Tesla, I guess what I'm asking is, how much do you know about the relationship between Tesla and Carr? Did Tesla maybe just give Carr a few ideas on how to do certain things, or did he give him material, more detailed instructions on how to, work further with some of these developments? What do you know, Ralph?
Well, there was and I saw it briefly in my stay with Carr. There was one book. It was a blue folder that Tesla had some very, very detailed information about the ether technology, that it was very important, that he was had not yet even got a chance to share with people. And I remember the folder. It was a kind of a 3-ring binder thing, and Carr, it was given to Carr, and in that it had a lot of different information on I can't think of anything specific right now. Levitation, for instance, like when Carr tried to duplicate some of Tesla's stuff from this book, from levitation that Tesla had tossed down. Levitation is quite simple. If you look at the clouds forming in the sky and eventually becoming more and more dense, there's billions of tons of energy suspended in the air, and then when the signal goes, it rains. But that's a natural levitation that goes on all the time, and we just don't see it. Well, anyway, when Carr built his prototypes, and he was offered at the time to create a patent on it, he went through the patent office, and they said, "Well, yeah, we see this, but this levitation stuff is not this is nonsense. We can't put a patent on levitation. There's no such thing, in a sense." So Carr said, "Well, there is. We've got a working device. We want a patent on it." And they said, "No, can't." So we'll tell you what, and this went on for, I guess, weeks with the patent office, and they said, if you pull your levitation concept out of the patent, then we'll give you a patent on an amusement device, and then
ridiculous
people can see ideas and so forth and so on.
Yeah.
So Carr pulled the levitation information out, and this was all in that blue book of levitation, and decided that this wasn't going to happen easily in his time as well. So he wrote a book called Dimensions of Mystery, which I happen to have the original manuscript of. And in that, he encoded everything in the simplest of terms, knowing that someday when man gets back to simplicity, they will see and understand how levitation works, and then there will be no stopping it, because everybody will see, oh my gosh, it's that simple, and it can no longer be stopped.
Doubted. It seems, sorry to interrupt, Ralph, but then obviously, and this is a huge area, we might focus the majority of this in the next hour, but what seems to be the issue, if you will, the problem, if you will, is the aspect of belief then, that we, in order for this technology to work properly, if I can put it that way, one needs to set their either pre-programmed belief to the side or simply believe that it is true, correct?
Yes, yes. Actually, it's a state of knowing, and the guidelines to get to this higher consciousness, which is necessary to appreciate that everything is alive. There is no exception, and in the oneness of where we operated in the atmosphere of car and the craft. Everything in frames of reference is true. Everything is real. Everything just is as you accept it and as you perceive it in the moment. So that there is no dispute necessary, because it is happening in just that moment. In one moment, this could be the reality of that moment. In the next moment, it could be the unreality of that moment. Because everything is in motion. Energy is always in motion.
Yeah.
And if you were to focus on any one thing, like Heisenberg, when he got into quantum physics and explained that the energy it takes to look at something also changes it. So
that's right.
If you're looking at a cup in the now, in this 1 second, and in the next second, it isn't the same cup at all. It's a reformulation of the energy put together by the conception held by the manifestation that is being produced from the mind, that we are actually creating our realities in nanoseconds, that what we're seeing out here is really energy fields that we're focusing in so many frames per second that our retinas and our cones and so forth are perceiving are happening in those nanoseconds, that we perceive it as a physical dense reality. And actually it's just energy being slowed down to a density where we can accept it in a camera, if you will, from the eyes and 5 senses, that you can conceive as real.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's really energy. All of it's energy.
That's right. And we know about the observer effect, Ralph, and obviously again that's a big key in this, that in that sense, and with the right outlook from the observer point of view, you can make, I guess, incredible things happen, right?
Yes, there is no limit. But people have put limits on themselves, so they no longer believe in anything but what they're told. And that is really it's really an uncomfortable reality that we would like to see people get out of. Now, Marcia and I and our greater range of people now are pulling to the point where we're enjoying every moment of our life, compared to the days when we had to work under servitude and toil to make things meet. We now are connected enough with natural law to use them as such, in the simplicity to knowing that when something is needed, it will be there because we said it will.
Yeah.
And it's a very, very powerful thing, but it does work.
So
that we threw away our textbooks, we threw away our junk that we've been carrying around forever, thinking, well, we're going to need this someday. And now I've adopted a new concept that whenever we need it, we know it will be there. And it's an absolutely splendid way of living, because you have no burdens and no excess baggage to carry around.
Sounds wonderful, Ralph. So actually, in one way, what you're talking about is a philosophy, not a technology, right?
Yes, it's a philosophy.
So,
and I'm not good on words or anything. I don't know how to define things. I know how they feel and I know how to express my feelings, but I don't always know the terms and the connotation where it fits.
Well, that's secondary as well, and that's what we'll try to get to here as well, I guess, Ralph, and try to work it out and explain also to our listeners and how this works. And I have so many more questions, obviously, for you, both in terms of the craft and your outlook now on life, and also what you feel is needed for us, humanity as a whole, to begin to move into a direction of both ether technology, but also utilizing magnetism and eventually leading to free technology, or free energy, I mean. But before we go there and before we really dive into some of that, Ralph, I think it's a good idea to talk a little bit about your website, a little bit about some of the things you're doing now, what people can find on the site, and then we'll take a little break and continue in the next hour. But bluestarenterprise.com. That's your main website, Ralph. You have articles there, videos, audio material, and much more. Is there something you want to say about the site? Is there anything you have, I don't know, books or videos or anything like that you'd like to promote?
Well, thanks to our webmaster. His name is Mark Hosa. He's in Australia. This is our 24-hour-a-day webmaster that's making sure that the information, not only I, but many like us, are doing, the information gets out to the people so that they can awaken from the idea that they're only just an idea called human. They're much, much more than that. They're creative beings that have the capacity to do anything they want at any moment in time that they want, because they are in control, not someone else. And so he's taken over the website, and where Marcia and I used to make discs up, hundreds of them, and give them away with no cost, never a cost, to people, so that they would see different ideas and get a chance to ponder and think about them, and eventually, hopefully, wake up. He has now taken those and put them on the website, so we no longer have to make that. It's freed up our time. We're giving lectures. I just gave a lecture for Noetic Science last Sunday, and there's another one coming up next week. So it frees us to do more of our work, which we enjoy. We get with audiences and get on one-on-one with people where they can really scrutinize and really throw their best skepticism at us, and we can turn it around for them, and we're really gratified in the ability to do that. But the website is now, and it's not just from us, but we have what we call pods. There are many groups of us. We're in Hawaii. We're up near the Canadian border in Idaho. We're all over the place, and we're in a holding pattern now with this either technology, if you will, or the esoteric philosophy, if you will, ready to, when we're given the permission, if you will, from the general consciousness to release these things. We're at the starting gate, and we're waiting for the bell to go off, because we have this technology. We can bring in spaceships overnight. There's no doubt about that, and we can along with that show them that we really don't need spaceships, but like we really don't need automobiles. It would be nice to run around in a spaceship instead of a Mustang or whatever. It's Mark has done a wonderful job, and he's on he's on Skype, and he maintains the website every day, and we're getting thousands and thousands of people now that are wanting to know more, and as that's happening, the gates are opening for us to give more, and it's becoming more receptive on the behalf of people. They're beginning to understand they're much more than they ever thought they were, and they have the power to change their lives and their realities instantly, and that's what we're trying to do.
Well, sounds wonderful. People can obviously take a look at the website even for even more, and a lot of the articles as well, bluestarenterprise.com. But do you feel you want to mention something else here before we take a little pause, Ralph?
No, I just want to honor Mark Hosa. He's the webmaster, for his undying efforts to make this all possible for us, because now we're being exposed to thousands of people all over the world. We're getting hits daily, thousands of hits, and I'm getting email and he's trying to keep it down for us so that we don't get carried away from what we're trying to do here. But the information, the knowledge, the love, and the interest in the concept of who we really are, what we really are, and why we're here. We're here to just enjoy this thing called life, and that's all. Nothing more, nothing less. Just to enjoy with love, to love your work, to love your neighbor, to love yourself. It's not the division that has come about through the duality of right and wrong and up and down and left and right, because it doesn't really exist. There's only really love. So that being said, I guess, and he's bringing in other people from all over, and we're inviting others to put their links on our website. So there'll be many other things along these same lines that people can look at and at their own pace, their own time, and their own acceptance, take a look at.
Absolutely, it's all about getting the imagination working as well here. If that's a key aspect, Ralph, getting understanding on many different levels. Obviously, on this, the internet is a great way to do that and get some of these wheels turning for people. But we'll take a short break here right then, Ralph, and then we'll continue to talk more about all of this in our member section. So stay with us, Ralph, and thank you for this first hour. In the next hour for our members, we will go deeper into the OTC X1 craft's inner interior workings. Ralph will talk about the technological specifications as well as the incorporation of sacred geometry, ley lines, and consciousness to operate this craft. Ralph puts emphasis on faith and our power to manifest, and that it's important not to work against the flow of nature and nature's laws. Ralph will also share what he saw at Area 51, magnetism versus electromagnetism, and what he currently is working on. Don't miss this second hour full of intriguing information together with Ralph Ring. RedEyesCreations.com, that's the website. Log in or sign up to stream or download this second hour or any of our previous programs in their entirety. Our archives go all the way back to 2006, and you should take advantage of getting access to the latest and some of the classics. There are gems and nuggets in there that you don't want to miss. So thank you for staying with us. Rauni Lena Lukanen Kilde, John Taylor Gatto, Christopher Dunn, David Warner Mathiasen, Mehran Keshe, Josh Reeves, and Jurilina are some of the guests that we have upcoming on Red Eyes Radio. You are of course welcome to tune in when we're back with more soon, but right now we'll proceed with Ralph Ring in our member section.